Welcome to the Fortified Life Podcast, where we learn how to develop a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. From the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. Here's our host, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, stewardship coach, and my husband, the man they call Mr. Fortified, Jason Davis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jason Davis, a.k.a. Mr. Fortified, and we're back for another episode of the Fortified Life Podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. Now, I got to tell you, I'm excited each and every single week. It's not a matter of having to, I get to do this. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, the individual that we've got on for this episode is a powerhouse. I remember one of the first times, we'll come back to this later, one of the first times I spoke to him, I think we spoke for about 3 or 4 hours. I didn't even know what I was getting into, but I have been impacted ever since. He's shared quite a bit of wisdom with me, and I have implemented many things that this man has told me about. Before I bring him on, let me introduce him to you. Mack Story co-founded Top Story Leadership with his wife, Rhea, to provide motivational speaking, leadership development training, coaching, and consulting. They have published more than 30 books on personal growth and leadership development and are often featured keynote speakers at conferences and seminars. Regardless of the topic or audience, Mack and Rhea most often speak and teach together, providing their audiences a much more dynamic, humorous, and engaging experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life, Mack Story. Mack, what's going on, sir?
That was outstanding, Jason. You gave me too big of a reputation to uphold here on the show. But you know what I like about you is what you said on there. The most important thing you said during that opening was you've implemented some things. That's I talked to a lot of people. I had a couple of those. Actually, one lady was 3 hours this week I talked to. I never spoke to her before, and someone else I think was 2 hours. I do that. I do it for free, and that's how I pour into people. One way that I give back, and people always want to know, what can I do for you? And it's exactly what you just said. ROI for me is go get some results and let me know.
Yeah. Well, Mack, I think that might be a good place to kind of start because, Mack, and especially in the space that you're in and the day and time we're in business, and a lot of people, they're chasing their thing and they're trying to grow their influence and their impact. Why have you chosen to kind of go against the grain and, I'm just going to pour into this person and there's no, you have to have a fee, and I'm not knocking people who do that just to get a little bit of their time, but why do you kind of choose to do it that way?
I just want to authentically live what I teach. Gotcha. I know a lot of people in this industry and in this business, they say all the right stuff, but at the end of the day, they really want to make money. And you need to make enough money to survive. You don't need to make enough money to have a couple of mansions and a plane and all that. You ain't got to have that. That's a need. That's a want to have. That ain't a need to have. And the reason I do it is because I can authentically connect with people. When they know I'm doing it to help them, like you talk about the call we had and all that. There's so many people like you that I speak to. I can't even keep up with all of you. Actually, it's a lot of people. But what I want, what I try to help other people get is positive word of mouth advertisement. And, like the call you were on with me, I was not trying to sell you anything. I was trying to help you. But people like you talk about me later, but I don't do it for that. That's just a natural byproduct of investing in people. They're going to talk positively about you. And for the folks who's listening, at the end, I know you'll ask how to contact me. I'll give them my phone number. It's on top of my website. People can call me. And when I started out, though, I've charged folks as much as $750 an hour, but I didn't do that long. And I decided I didn't like that model. And people was actually paying that, but I'd rather help them for free. And we pretty much speak for free as well. It's just our model. People buy our books. People say, well, how do you make your money? And we make it from selling books. If we go speak at events or on site, we require a minimum number of books. But the reason that is I tell leaders, if you'll invest in your team, we'll invest in your team. What that means for me is I only want to support leaders who truly want to invest in their team. Get them a book, get them a resource. Because a lot of times we may go speak to 20 people, but there's 10,000 people in the company, or there's 500 people in the company, and they don't get to come in the room with us. So if they'll get books and hand them out, they're investing in those folks too. So that's the main reason I have that model, set up like that. And it's pretty unique. I mean, we've been paid $20,000 to speak, but last time we did that was 2016. And it's probably the last time I was paid for coaching and mentoring also. And because I do this model, and we make plenty of money. I always tell people, if you make enough difference, you'll make enough money. And the key part is you can't want a whole lot of stuff when you get started.
Yeah.
Because when you start with this model, you don't make a lot of money, but you make a lot of difference. And over time, these folks that you've helped, some of them grow into upper level positions. And then it happens all the time. Somebody's calling me and wants me to, come speak to their team. Somebody that they were on the front lines, 5-6 years ago, and now they're in a leadership position, and they ain't never forgot us. But I don't chase people.
Right.
I don't cold call. I don't even follow up with existing clients. I tell them when I leave, you can call me anytime. I'm happy to talk to you, but I ain't gonna call and bother you. I know you're busy. And I tell the people in the room, if you like us, you want us back, you better be selling us, because I ain't calling the boss saying, hey, that went great. You need to get us back in. I tell them that's your job, is to do that. If you don't like us, but you like the content, tell them, hey, I don't like Mack and Rhea, but I like the content. Let's keep making it happen. And so, we're different, but it makes us authentic. People want to listen. People want to connect with us. People want to have us help them. And I'm kind of selfish in that way. I like helping people. I got a lot out of helping you that day, Jason.
And it had a compounding effect. It's still helping me to this day, Mack.
Outstanding.
Mack, and talking about how you pour into people, you and Rhea, I mean, you've got a great deal of experience, but you also have a unique professional background in how you got started. So kind of take us through that professionally, how you got started, because we know in 2023, you just didn't wake up as a keynote speaker helping, blue collar industry.
No, it doesn't work like that. You have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yep. And one thing I forgot to mention, Jason, I just want to share with your team. I share it everywhere I go. If you ever hear me speak, you'll hear me say this at the beginning. I just forgot to mention it a moment ago. I like everybody to know. I know it, but a lot of other people don't know it. That I like people to know I'm bilingual. And a lot of people think that means I speak English and Spanish, but that's not it. It's English and country, Jason. You with me? So anybody who's listening out there, I'm doing the best I can. I speak with a lot of apostrophes. When you write, you put an apostrophe when you leave out the letter. I speak with a lot of apostrophes. You just can't see them, but they're everywhere. You can hear that I'm missing a few things, but that's just, part of it. What reminded me to say that was you asked where I come from. The first 10 years of my career, and that started in 1988. The first 10 years of my career, I worked in manufacturing. I was a frontline entry-level factory worker. And a lot of people on the front lines talk just like me in Alabama. That's where I grew up. It was in Alabama. And if you ever talk to Rhea, she doesn't talk like me. And we grew up about 10 miles apart. People say, how is that? I said, I grew up with the poor part of Alabama. I grew up with the uneducated folks. And we were not really that poor, but neither one of my parents graduated high school. And I picked up a lot of words. I'm still discovering words that I say that not even real words. But so I did that for 10 years, and I eventually started working my way up. I went to college, got a 4-year degree in business, just the easiest one I could get to use to open a door. I was working 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes 16, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, single parent. So it was a lot of work to go get a degree, but it took me about 7 years, and I did it. I barely graduated high school, but I graduated actually with high honors from my college days because I applied myself. And so during all that time, I started working my way up through engineering type positions, but I didn't have an engineering degree, but I learned to operate about 70 CNC lathes and mills and drills and gear shapers and, in a manufacturing plant. Then I started programming those machines as a CNC programmer, and also did drawing process drawings, chuck setup sheets, anything need to be drawn. I was doing that on the computer, and then started setting up manufacturing sales. Then I got into cost estimation engineering. And during that period is when I graduated college. And I graduated in December. February, I got a new job across town and about doubled my pay. So that 7 years paid off, pretty big time financially, just in a short period of time. And And I went across town doing the same kind of thing with a completely different company. I had been at my previous company about 14 years. And even back then, I was like, why will a company I've never worked at pay me twice as much that I don't know nothing about, pay me twice as much as a company I've worked in 14 years, and I can do almost everything. Mm-hmm. And, if I wouldn't have made that choice, I wouldn't have got those, that added benefit. A lot of times it takes people courage to leave a job and go to another job and that sort of thing. So anyway, went there. Started there as a cost estimation engineer. Then I became a process engineer. Then we went down a lean manufacturing path. I was working at a multi-billion-dollar global company and had about 70 plants. And our plant was going down the lean manufacturing path, which was intentional and methodical process improvement. Mm-hmm. I raised my hand and led that effort. And from 2005 to 2008, we went from minus 3% gross profit margin to plus 35% gross profit margin. And really turned around our entire facility. And then 2008, I resigned, started my own lean manufacturing consulting business. Did that for up until 2012. And then in 2012, I decided to do what I'm doing now, which is personal growth, leadership development, building teams, developing leaders from the CEO, business owner, all the way down to the frontline entry-level folks, all the people who support them and lead them. Pretty much everybody at every level in any industry. We don't only do it for blue collar industries, but that's really my focus. We speak for a lot of white collar organizations. Got to speak at Yale University, School of Management. That's about white collar as you can get, I imagine. But I got to talk about blue collar leadership. So you never know what'll happen. That's never was a dream or anything. It's just something that happened one day.
Wow. Mack, as you were talking, I forgot to ask you this. The late Zig Ziglar talked a lot about this when he would do intros to a lot of talks. He'd say, and I think even Howard Partridge, who was part of that mentoring tree, and speaking to say, "Hey, I'm from L.A. and it's actually lower Alabama." So are you familiar with that? With folks from Alabama, is that a thing?
We do say that. I actually got to speak in L.A. with Les Brown. He invited me and Rhea to speak with him in 2014 in Los Angeles, and I got to pay off with that joke right there. I told him it's awesome to be in L.A. because I'm from L.A. They knew I wasn't from L.A. the way I was talking. I said, "Oh no, not this L.A., the other L.A." And then they look at, I'm like, Lower Alabama, and they all laughed.
Yeah.
They understood then, but yeah, I haven't heard Zig say it. I hadn't actually ever read any of his material. I share some of his quotes that I've read in other people's books. I need to read some of his books, sounds like, but he was a country guy the way I understand it. He had a good Southern drawl going.
He sure did. Well, Mack, as you journeyed through your professional experience, I know there was a lot of lessons along the way, and many of them on the personal side, not just what you picked up in the workforce. So just talk to us about what were some of those turning points that you ran across, especially from a faith perspective, because you talk about transitioning from a 9-to-5, and then you have your own consulting company, and then you launch out on your own, you and Rhea, and I'm sure that took a step of faith, probably at multiple levels in between. So just tell us about that.
Yes, it'd probably be pretty interesting for your listeners. I know you know some of the story. I don't know if I say anything new for you, maybe, but for your audience, I was agnostic most of my life until actually 2012, and 2012 I raised my hand, accepted Christ with John Maxwell down in West Palm Beach, Florida. We were down there for some training. That was in 2012. But to go back to answer your question, 2008 is when I discovered the type content I write about, speak about, in everything today. Leadership development, personal growth type content. A friend gave me a 1-hour audio. Actually, he put it on my iPod at the time. He took it and put a lot of music on there. I was in upper management. I was a lean manufacturing manager reporting to the plant manager, and one of my friends, a coworker, he was a frontline quality technician. He took my iPod, put a lot of music on it. When he brought it back, he said, "Hey, man, I put a business book on there for you." I said, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And this was 2005 that he did this. I didn't listen to it until 2008. I'm a slow learner, right? It took me a while to get to it. But 2005, he took it, he brought it back. He said, "I put a business book on there for you." I said, "What is it, Zach?" He said, "It's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People." I said, is it any good? He said, I don't know. I never listened to it. I said, okay. And I said, well, why'd you put it on there? He said, well, my friend's dad talks about it all the time. He said, he talks about how good it is and, that sort of thing. So I told him I appreciate it or whatever. 3 years go by, I never listened to it. 2008, 3 years later, I started my own business. I'm driving around in my car and got my music, iPod plugged in, my music's playing, and that's all that's on there is music that I can remember. All of a sudden, a guy started talking. Music song goes off, a guy started talking, and I'm like, hey, there is a God. I didn't know what it was, but, that's a little joke, but I really it did kind of surprise me because I didn't know what it was. That guy just started talking, and I only had a 1 hour audio version, the highlight. The whole book's probably 13 hours, if you listen to the whole book. I didn't know there was a book. I didn't know there was an industry. I didn't know nothing except this guy started talking. And then I looked on my screen on my stereo and it said 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I said, that's that business book Zach gave me. And I'm starting my own business. I don't have any. Maybe I should listen to it. and I let it play. And pretty quick, within just a few minutes, one of the first things Dr. Covey, he said 2 important things, but I didn't get the first one until a little, I had to listen to the whole audio. I started listening to it. I've been reading and listening to audio, watching videos every day since that day, since 2008. 15 years now, I read every day something. But one of the things he said, I'll touch on it in a second, a little deeper, but he says, I missed it the first time, right? It was several times of playing that 1 hour audio before I ever got this thing. So it wasn't the most important, but it was the second most important probably. But right off the bat, he says, if you truly want to learn this material, you need to start teaching it to others within 24 hours. Once that resonated with me, I did start doing that. I mean, that's why I'm doing this today, because of that one nugget right there, right? I call those golden nuggets. Yeah. Because it meant so much to me. I wanted it to stick. But remember, I didn't get that first couple of laps through that audio. The thing I did get that I needed the most was once he got into teaching about habit 1, be proactive, he said between stimulus and response, human beings have the freedom to pause and choose their response. It sounds so simple today, but back then I didn't know nothing about pausing. I could go from the dude you're talking to now to the most ballistic idiot you've ever seen in your life in a split second. And I didn't know nothing about, I knew about reacting. I didn't know about being proactive. I knew how to be reactive. And a lot of people push my buttons, what I would say, or flip my switch, but I didn't realize I was doing that myself. Once I figured that out, I got control of my temper and that sort of thing. But the reason I'm telling you that story right there is because that's the one that really changed my life. Because I had bad temper. I was in the Marines. I was in the infantry. My dad, I didn't really have a good relationship with, still don't. But I always looked up to my uncle, who was in the Marines and Blackwater contractors, and he one of them like special ops kind of dudes. And I always used to say he made me crazy till I figured out it was me causing me to be crazy. So I don't talk to him anymore because he's toxic. Love him to death, but he wants me to be like I used to be, and I ain't going down that path anymore. So I tell you all that to say, as I started reading these principles and started learning them at that time, remember I was agnostic until 2012. So 4 years of me reading this stuff every day and starting to learn it and applying it. And I knew Stephen Covey talks about these principles come from the Bible. John Maxwell, most everybody understands it and says it comes from the Bible, but I didn't. But I didn't care. What I knew was it worked. It made you a better person. It made you have a better life. It allowed you to help other people. And that's what I valued. So what happened was I started living the principles, doing the works, what we're supposed to do. But I didn't know all about the Bible and all that stuff at that time. But I was living it. And even back then, Jason, because 2008, I started doing, between 2005 and 2012, I logged 11,000 hours leading process improvement teams. I get a whole new team every week, 6 to 8 people, and start over from scratch with a new project, with new people who don't like me, don't like change, don't like the boss, don't like each other. That's where I really learned to lead. So as soon as I discovered this, I started sharing it with them. Like I mentioned a minute ago, Dr. Covey said, share it with other people. Start teaching it. That was one place I had a group of people every week I could start teaching this stuff to. So I did. So I became more aligned with these principles, and I was teaching them, and I was getting results in my own life. And it was funny back then. People first break not every week, but most of the time, the first break we'd have on a Monday, somebody'd come up and say, "Man, are you a pastor?" I'd be like, "I'm the farthest thing from a pastor you probably ever gonna meet," but not really. There's some really bad people out there, but I was nowhere close to being a pastor, especially being a good pastor. Right? There's bad pastors and good pastors, even though they're trying to live the principles. A lot of them still human beings, and they make mistakes, and they don't set a good example. So anyway, 2012, I went to my first training with John Maxwell, and I knew he used to be a pastor, and I knew all this stuff. I didn't care. It didn't bother me. I was never offended by religion or anything. I just didn't know, and I was just kind of neutral. And we went down there, and we happened to be there for 3 or 4 days, and we was there on a Sunday, and he told everybody who was at the conference, "Hey, I'm going to do a service Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, before we get started at 8 with the official event. If you want to come to it, everybody's welcome." There were people there from all over the country, all different kind of religions. But he said, "Everybody's welcome to come. I'm going to talk about Jesus and my faith. Don't want to offend you, but that's what I'm going to do, and you're welcome to come." And I didn't care what John talked about. I like hearing John talk. So I went in there, and he did his service, and it was awesome, as everything else he does was awesome. And at the end, he asked everybody to bow their head for prayer, and I did. Even back those days, I was always respectful of people in prayer, and I'd bow my head and everything, and I did that. And then he threw a surprise on me at the end, and my integrity wouldn't let me ignore it. I had to play along, because by that time my integrity actually meant something. So he said to everybody while their head was bowed, if you're not a person of faith, if you don't believe in Jesus and that sort of thing, raise your head up for a minute. I want to talk to you. Jason, I wanted to keep my head down so bad I couldn't stand it. And nobody would have known, right? Right. It's what people talk about, what you're doing when nobody's looking. Literally nobody was looking, because everybody had their head bowed, and they don't know me personally anyway. But so he said, "Raise your head up." I raised my head up, and there's a lot of other people, and he talked to us about Jesus. And he said, "If you want to invite Jesus in your life, raise your hand, repeat after me." And my hand just went straight on up. I don't know what caused that to happen. It was unexpected. It was actually on my birthday too. It was pretty cool. Wow. And so raised my hand up and repeated the prayer with him, or the more about it. I still, I ain't a perfect Christian. I've read the Bible cover to cover. I've been baptized. I'm on the team. But the way it's written, it just doesn't resonate with me. That, it doesn't stick when I read it. Like I read the stuff John talks about that he got out of the Bible, and he just rephrased it into something he calls sticky, say it so it sticks. And that stuff sticks all to my mind. That's why people used to think I was a pastor. They could tie what I was saying to the scripture. I can't do that. I don't know why, but I think God's called me to do what actually happened to me, to bring people closer through sharing the principles in ways that, because I can't quote verses in scripture. I can't do that. I don't know all that stuff, but I quote it all the time. I just don't know I'm quoting it right. But I can't say, book so-and-so verse, whatever chapter and all that. I can't do that. But people listening can do it. And even if they can't, I'm teaching them those principles from the Bible, and they're starting to live those principles just like I did, maybe without knowing it. Maybe they do know it. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't care. It doesn't make any difference. I always tell them I think I'm being called to bring people closer to living the principles. And then it's somebody else's job, like John's, to put them in the headlock and bring them on the team. We all got our roles. Yeah. And I think really that is my role. I don't know it. How would we ever know? But I think, my brand, Blue Collar Leadership, when you understand faith, you're a person of faith. The greatest leader that ever walked the face of the earth was a blue collar leader. He was a carpenter.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, Mack. I like how you put that. And folks, as you're listening, I just love how Mack breaks it down and makes it simple. He's like, look, here's what it is. Here's what God did in my life. And here's where I believe that my calling is. Bring people close and let people like a John Maxwell or maybe your pastor get them in that headlock and bring them in. I like
John
that.
John put me in the headlock, man. He was like a ninja in there. I didn't even see it coming.
I I love that, Mac. Speaking of bringing people in, Mac, you and Rhea have top story leadership, and with all your experience from working on the front lines to having your own consulting company, see, you and Rhea, you launch out, and now you're speaking all over the world. When we get into your zone of genius, Mac, leadership, it's so nebulous, or it can be. Mac, it could be this big pile of stuff, and some people don't even know where to begin with leadership. And one thing I like about you is you like to break things down and make it simple. So when we talk about leadership, Mac, what really are we getting into? What's the crux of it, and where do people start?
Yeah, for me, I know exactly where they start is in the mirror. That's where they start. Yeah. Whatever work they can do in that mirror, that's the key to their success. But I always tell people the mirror is the most important and effective tool in your leadership, personal growth toolbox. It's your mirror. And a lot of people I speak to, they'll tell me later. Actually, I was speaking to some company. I was there multiple days recently, and one of the guys, supervisors, actually was an upper level manager. He come back and said, "Hey man, I went and bought a mirror. I put it up on my wall in front of my desk. So every time I think something's wrong or I'm frustrated, I can look in the mirror and I know where my problem's at." But so you got to start in the mirror, and then where do you start? I teach that character development equals leadership development. They're the same thing. Whenever I'm talking, it's the exact same. There's no difference for me. If somebody's in a company and they're doing leadership development and it's not character development, they're not doing leadership development. They're just doing something, which is probably management training, and calling it leadership development. Because if it's not character based, it ain't leadership development. Not high impact, high level leadership. It's management. And a lot of people don't know what they don't know, or they'll go listen to a CEO of some multi-billion-dollar company who gets retired and writes a book and does some stuff and calls it leadership, and all he's doing is teach people how to manage people. And that's, it causes people to really get confused because there's so many different ways to define it and describe it, and that sort of thing. So I also say that, character development equals leadership development, but also personal development is the foundation of leadership development. If you really want to become a high impact leader of other people, you got to learn how to lead yourself well. Like even before I became a Christian in 2012, that was in August of 2012. In June of 2012, I quit drinking alcohol. I had done that my whole life. I graduated high school in 1987. Probably started drinking alcohol in 84 or something like that, somewhere around there in high school. And so I quit drinking alcohol in June. Right after that's when I discovered John. And because I wasn't drinking on the weekend, I was trying to figure out how to better myself on the weekend. So I was on the computer looking up leadership stuff, personal growth stuff. I was 4 years into my journey, but I hadn't been working on me as much. I've been working on making me more effective, doing my consulting business with other people, but I hadn't really got out the mirror yet. I was still looking out the window at everybody else, and how could I influence other people, to accomplish the mission, which is great. But I shifted into a whole different gear when I really started working on me and stopped drinking alcohol. And then that was in June. August, I went to the training. I found out about that morning with John and went to that training in June. And when I left there, I told my son, he was with me. I told him, I was, how old was I? 39. No, 43. I was 43 when that happened in 2012. And I told my son, I'm late. I'm slow to the game. I'm 43 years old, and I just decided I want to be a leadership speaker and coach and mentor and all that stuff. I said, you know what my competitive advantage is going to be? Eric, that's my son. He's like, what's going to be, Dad? I said, it's going to be the degree that I live what I teach. And that's going to be my competitive advantage. Doesn't mean I'm perfect, but it means I'm serious about modeling this stuff. It's one reason I do the deals like I was telling you. That's another way I live what I teach. I share with people like you how I do what I do, so you can go do the same exact thing. That's living out of abundance, right? Instead of scarcity. Yeah. And I'm doing it for free to prove I value helping people. And I make plenty of money selling my books and doing that stuff. I don't have to try to get every single dime I can get for whatever reason. I have no idea, but there's a lot of people, that's all they want to do is they want to get every dime they can get, have more dimes, I guess. I don't know. But Another thing I did that day, I said, John's never going to know this, but it's one way I could allow him, pay him some respect for letting me stand on his shoulders, and I can get better. I had a lot of win-win coming out of that deal down there, but I had been the kind of person, if I said a one-word sentence, it had 2 words of profanity. I was good at alcohol and I was good at profanity, and infantry Marines are usually good at both of those things, and I was really skilled at both of them. So I had quit drinking in June of 2012, and in August 2012, I quit using profanity. I don't even say the little words anymore, and I did that. I would have done it already by now, but I did it that day specifically because I didn't want to be talking about John Maxwell, who's a pastor, and I just became a Christian and using profanity to represent him and his brand. I did that. A lot of people say, why'd you quit drinking? I did it for you. Why'd you quit using profanity? I did it for you. Why'd you quit acting like an idiot? I did it for you. Because I kind of like acting like an idiot and using profanity and drinking. I like that for me, but it's not a good role model. And I'm doing that for everybody else. So because I want to help other people, it's actually allowed me to live a better life. But I'm really doing it for other people. And it's hard sometimes because I want to do all the other stuff. But I don't do it because you can't slip. Once you lose trust, then people question you from then on out because they, well, he did it 10 years first time. Now we don't know when's he going to do it again. So won't nobody know that I truly quit all that until I die. But I've never slipped. I ain't never went back. Any of this stuff I've ever quit, I ain't never went back, not one time.
My goodness. Mack, one thing that has resonated with me as long as I've known you, in addition to the modeling, there's so many, I feel like there's so many classifications of leadership out there. You got, self-leadership and transformational leadership. And what I remember from one of our conversations, you said, Jason, there's like all this marketing. You got high impact leaders and low impact leaders. So just take us through a little bit, Mack, just your take on, hey, listen, high impact, low impact, what builds high impact leadership?
Okay, so that's another way I make it simple, right? You say I like to make stuff simple because there is servant leadership. There's leaders versus managers, leading versus managing. We touched on that a minute ago, actually. But if people don't know all that, they don't understand. If somebody hasn't studied management versus leadership, they don't know really there is a difference. If people hadn't studied servant leadership, they don't know what that is. But everybody knows what it means to be a high impact person or a low impact person. They kind of give that enough meaning in their own mind that they instantly understand. So that's what I refer to it as. But people who are faith-based, who are familiar with servant leadership, it's the same exact thing I'm calling high impact leadership. There's no difference. So what is a high impact leader? I mean, there's someone who lives with integrity. They're authentic. Some people say, well, I can be authentic. If I got something to say, I say it. Well, it depends on what it is you saying and how you saying it. Yeah, you can be authentic, but you can also lose trust while you're being authentic. But it means living your life in a way that you can be an open book and you can be authentic, but it's in a way that you develop positive influence with positive people. Like that's, as I've been growing myself, becoming a high impact leader, it's a struggle when you do all this because some people say you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, or they'll post something on your social media that, when I've learned don't try to teach leadership through comments on a social media post because it's hard enough to do it in a room with people you're in a room with for a long time, much less one little comment. So, but people are going to question you, and they're going to do that your entire life. People question John, people question Zig Ziglar. There's somebody who values other stuff. But what's always kept me going and not questioning myself is the quality of people who tell me I'm on the right path. Like Jimmy Collins, the former president and COO of Chick-fil-A. He was Truett Cathy's third staff hire. He's a high impact leader. He don't talk about leadership though. He talks about followership. And he's 87 now, and he's been a personal friend and mentor of mine since 2015. But if I hadn't changed, he would never have been my friend and mentor like he is. I mean, I've had him on my podcast. I got a 3-part episode series with him. But high impact leadership is leading yourself in a way that other high impact leaders are willing to follow you, because 10s follow 10s. You get a team of 10s, you don't know who the leader is. It depends on what's going on, who the leader is. It's based because 10 following 10 means we all have a high degree of character, 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. And then relative to our individual competency, we have a 10. Your competency is completely different probably than my competency.
Yeah.
But if we're both 10s character-wise, we're going to get along because we don't care about the competency. We ignore we ignore the differences. We value the strengths, ignore weaknesses. My weaknesses ain't your weakness, so I'll follow you. In a few minutes, if somebody else, neither one of us may have the strength. Somebody else on our team, we follow them. We don't care. Our goal is to accomplish the mission. We don't want credit, so it doesn't matter whose idea it is. We want results, and we're gonna give each other credit. Nobody's taking credit, and everybody's giving. Everybody else is passing credit. I mean, how awesome is that? And everybody's taking responsibility, and nobody's casting the blame. That's high impact leadership. But you don't have to be a boss or a manager, formal authority leader in a leadership position to be a high impact leader. That's one thing I teach. I teach frontline entry level people how to be high impact leaders. Anybody who teaches the stuff that I'm teaching or allows me to teach it in their organization, we're building an entire team of high impact leaders. And when you get that, you got a high performance team overall. And you got your succession planning already in place. You're developing everybody. You telling them, hey, this is what we value, meaning these principles. And then you're allowing everybody at any level to start aligning themselves with those principles. And whoever those people are at any level, any high impact leader formally and within the organization, going to be drawn to those people right away. I mean, I got one client, he's a city manager of about 400 people up near St. Louis. He's in St. Peters, Missouri. And I see him, they do leadership Zoom calls on Saturday with their team, and they invite me and other people to get on the call with them. So I get on and watch and listen. And as I'm looking at the screen, in the room where they actually doing it from, I got the city manager on one side and got a trash truck driver on the other side. Both of them are high impact leaders. Both of them are into my content like you can't imagine. And then also there's another manager who she kind of runs the computer. She's sitting there. But the real dynamics is city manager on one side, trash truck driver on the other side. And if you didn't know that, you'd think both of them were high level managers in the organization. All three of those people, you would think that, because there's no difference. And I've been mentoring the trash truck driver for about 1.5 years since that city manager told that guy he needed to listen to my podcast. and then he reached out, and I had one of them 3-hour calls, but we probably had 100 3-hour calls. And he's tearing it up. So that's what high impact leadership is. It ain't got nothing to do with your position entirely. It's got everything to do with your character.
That's good, Mac. That's some of those gold nuggets you were talking about that you were giving us. Well, Mac, as we get ready to round things out, we're in 2023, and obviously, everything that we've come out of, especially out here in the West in the United States, of what's happened in the last 3 years. And a lot of people and companies are trying to figure out, like, where do we go from here, coming out of pandemic, all types of social injustice, the economic uncertainty. And so for you, Mac, in 2023, what would say your theme or your goal this year that you wanted to see happen in this year?
For me personally?
Yeah.
I just want more opportunity to do what I'm doing. And you gave it to me today. So I appreciate that. That's why I speak to people. People want to talk to me. I talk to them because they charge my battery. You're allowing me to charge my battery. Hopefully I'm adding value to you and your audience, but I just want more of an opportunity because I don't cold call. I don't chase people. I don't pay for marketing. I don't do any of that stuff that everybody else does. And so it's just a principle, going slow to go fast. It's a lean manufacturing principle, process improvement, but it's also a leadership principle, right? And so, all that stuff you just described, it doesn't matter what happens when you align yourself with principles. It doesn't matter what's happening. You do the same thing, right? Ain't nothing I'm doing. I didn't do anything any different when COVID hit. I don't do anything any different because whatever goofy stuff you see on the news, I don't even watch the news, but I try to read it to stay up, with what's going on in the world. I hate it because it's terrible character everywhere, everywhere, every level, every race, every kind of company. It doesn't make any difference. But what I also know is there's amazing people, every character. There's high character people, every race, every country, all over this world. There's some high character people, and what I'm trying to do is help people like you, who are people like me, to help develop people of high character. There's nothing wrong you can find going on in this world that if me and you have a conversation, we can't trace a root cause back to character. Everything that's going on. And if you're a person of faith, it's aligned within what's in the Bible. If you're not a person of faith, it's still aligned with what's in the Bible. Doesn't make any difference. In other religions too, the good stuff that we all follow, that we all of us who value being positive role models and what we define as good people, still everything's relative though. That's the whole point. Everything's relative. So when you learn so much, then it's hard to talk about it because it's all relative. Because, crooks build trust with crooks.
Right.
But they don't hang out with people who are honest.
Yeah.
Because they don't share the same values. Mm-hmm. But crooks trust each other with some things, but not other things. But the thing is, high character people, they trust people with everything. Mm-hmm. Because they know if we're high character and you don't know something, I know you're going to say, I don't know, man. I don't know. I can try to find out. I know people of high character ain't going to pretend to know, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I just want to keep working on me. I want to keep helping people like you. Our world needs it. I think I just did a post a little while ago on LinkedIn. I can't remember. I do lots of stuff all the time. This is all I do 24/7, 365, something to do with this. And, you got to have courage, though. You got to have courage to step out. I had to have courage to step out. I remember when I first started, I wouldn't even share any quotes from anybody because what my social media network's going to think. And then I started sharing them from everybody else. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to share my own thoughts and stuff. And then finally I started sharing, my own stuff. And then I started speaking and telling people. But, the thing about it, what you said, Jason, with what's going on in the world, they ain't nobody out there can tell me, what I'm learning ain't what's right. It'd be like you trying to talk me into gravity is not real. You could float up out of that chair any minute, Mac, if you just quit thinking there's a such thing as gravity. No, I know there's gravity. I got all the evidence to support my belief. It's the same way with all these principles I teach. A lot of people struggled in business. They still struggling in business because they focused on practices. And then when things change, the practice no longer works. But a principle always works. Yeah. And it's better to prepare your team to deal with change before the major change happens. I was thinking when COVID hit and all the changes that were going on, if people had been helping people learn how to grow through change, they wouldn't have to watch them suffer through change. But that takes proactive, high-impact leaders who want to develop people because they want to develop people, not to make more money, not to do anything, not to worry about an ROI. If somebody ever calls me Jason and they start talking about what's the ROI, I tell them I'm the wrong person to help you because I don't know. I don't care. Leaders who hire me, they don't know and they don't care. They hire me because they want to help people have a better life. And they got resources and they got the ability to use those resources to invest in people and help them have a better life. That's the only ROI a high impact leader needs. They need to know I'm helping my people have a better life. And that's what I tell people. When they invite me in, I say, you got to let me come in and say, I'm here to help you have a better life. At home and at work. And I said, but you got to get in alignment with me and you got to support me helping them have a better life because you can connect with them. If I walk in the door and I start saying, hey, I'm here to help y'all make more profit so the boss can get a fancier car or a bigger plane or a bigger bonus, they could care less.
Yeah.
But I go in and I start talking about help you have a better life and you figure out what that means. People start listening then. And while they're at work, work's going to get better. But also while they're at home, their life's going to get better.
Wow, Mac, that's powerful, man. As we get ready to close, Mac, you've given us all these golden nuggets. By now, people are like, man, who is Mack Story? And so where can they find you, Mac, you and Rhea? How can people reach out to you? I know you dropped at the top of the show phone number, but what's the best way for people to reach you guys?
Yep, 334-728-4143. That's my cell phone number. People ask me sometimes, why you give your cell phone number out like that? I want somebody to call me. That's why. Hardly anybody does, but I get more interaction from people on LinkedIn. Somebody will share a cool post and I say, hey, here's my number. Give me a call. I like to talk to you. You got a lot of potential, to help this world become a better place. And they'll reach out and we'll have a 3-hour conversation or something. So that's my cell phone number. I tell people I'm always open, but I ain't always available. Like right now, I'm wide open, but I ain't available. My phone over here, but it ain't. It's on, do not disturb.
Right.
And I had to sleep every now and then like regular people. But bluecollarleadership.com, that's my blue collar leadership brand page. And then topstoryleadership.com, that's our like top level website. And I have a podcast, Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. I've got probably 330 something episodes. A lot of my books, I have 30-part series on my books. I mean, tons and tons of stuff. And Ria's got a podcast, RIASTORY, Ria Story. And riastory.com is her website. We got 34 books today. Her focus is on personal growth and leadership development for women. But we do speak together no matter what we're talking about because it's principles. Yeah. You know, gravity applies to men and women the same, and kids, and any job, any profession. So do all these principles. And when you understand that, you can talk to anybody. Doesn't matter who they are. You just change the story so it connects with the people. But thank you, Jason, for what you're doing, man. You're making an impact on the world. And the world needs you to keep climbing, man, so don't stop.
I won't, Mac. I appreciate it. And folks, make sure that you find out all the details about Mac and Ria. I've bought those. I have some of those 34 books for sure in my library. So I'm not telling you from, just being casual. I'm telling you from reading them. Mac and Ria, they know what they're talking about. And, but the key is they wrote it, but we got to go do it. And, that's what Mac will always come back and say, hey, you might have read that, but what'd you go do with it? That's what I love about you, Mac. And I just wanted to thank you for taking time out to come on the Fortified Life podcast. Kind of like the Avengers movies, Mack Story will return to the Fortified Life podcast for sure.
Well, I'll be glad to come back, man. If you want me back, your listeners want to reach out to you or give you some feedback. If they like what we had to say, we happy to, come back again. I will. And Ria will join you too if you ever want to get her on. She's happy to get on a different episode with you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Well, folks, you know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fortified Life Podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out FortifiedLifePodcast.com for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business. Available on Amazon.
You're listening to Your Worldwide Podcast.